unless at some point relationship coffee actually becomes cheaper than the standard, which is what I think will happen in the long run. We're going to have a steadier supply of coffee that is easily compliant to all this stuff.
This episode is proudly brought to you by Mapper Forward's workshop, It's Time to Become a Coffee Consultant. Learn how to diversify your revenue streams and create freedom from your day job while saying goodbye to that alarm clock forever by becoming a consultant within the coffee industry or directly to consumers who have shifted towards home brewing and home roasting. Protect your income from challenging times in the coffee value chain by taking this course today. Go to mapperforward.coffee/workshops or click the link in the show notes for details. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 4 of a brilliant, spicy, and really like a kind of conversation on this podcast that people who listen have come to be accustomed of. And I'm just so grateful to Lennart for this conversation because you get to show people that the part of them that they feel scared of putting out into the world is not something to be scared of. So I'm grateful for your openness and your what some people might think is vulnerability, but people like you and I don't see it as vulnerability. It's the way that we move every day very openly. But for those people who perhaps are scared to show the world that they stand for something and that they want to stick by something and that they're not scared of looking in the mirror that life holds up to them when they're living by their values, those are the people that are listening to this and saying, okay, I need to start paying attention. I can start taking a risk on backing myself. So I'm very grateful for that. This series, we're talking about being an independent, values-driven trader. And most people are sitting there going, I didn't know that you could be a values-driven coffee trader because that's not the status quo. You're demonstrating that you can. And you have talked about the privileges that have enabled you to be able to do that. I get the impression that you're not someone that lives large and someone that when you're building anything, you have to eat a whole bunch of humble pie. It's not as glamorous as most people think it is, right?
No.
You spend most of your time stressed out of your brain wondering where the next payroll is going to come from, et cetera, et cetera. Am I right?
Thankfully, not anymore. And also, we learned that the best mitigator for that stress is also just don't make any growth targets.
Yeah.
Just grow at the pace of what comes at you, and that thankfully is enough. So that is enough for us to make not a large profit, a tiny profit, but that's we lie awake at night of a lot of things, but survival is not one of them anymore. So that's really nice.
And was there a time in your business when that was a part of? Right. How long have you guys been in business?
All the time. 11 years.
Okay. Would you, if I had to hazard a guess, I would say that around year 6, year 7 is when things started to shift. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
There's a formula. I'm telling you, guys,
who
wants to do this, you have to eat shit for 6 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you can survive that long running a values-driven business, you'll make it.
Yeah, and it's like the typical startup culture is 3-4 years, right?
Yeah.
So it really requires longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you 3-4 years is if you sell out in some way, right? Or if you want to sort of inorganically grow the thing. If you don't, then it takes longer, but it might mean living humbly for a longer time, but it also means paying attention to your body, paying attention to things that come at you to live to keep your sanity. So,
all the best businesses I know in coffee, and other than coffee, but coffee is what I know. All of the best businesses that I know would withstand pretty much any proverbial earthquake that came their way, the founders ate brown rice for a month.
Yeah.
I know and I'm one of those people, right? Like, and they don't live extravagant lives, and they live within their means, and they're never a person that's going to criticize somebody else's failures because they know what it is to have lived that failure many, 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 many times in the journey of becoming a business that is going to be stable.
Well, personally, I do over-criticize others, and I over-criticize myself as well. But that's
their failures, though.
So I'm. No,
there's a difference.
No.
There's a difference there.
Yeah,
right.
There's a difference.
When you watch somebody fail, when you have failed, the empathy that you have for what that person is, whether they deserve it or not, is a different story.
Yeah. No,
them as a person, but the actual failure, nobody who has built anything celebrates somebody else's failure.
No, exactly.
Speaking of failure, let's talk about EUDR.
Brilliant bridge.
Folks, to be clear, I'm hopeful about EUDR. I'm really hopeful about it. Do I think, after having the conversations with people who know what they're talking about, that it is going to achieve what it's going to achieve? I'm not so sure. I would love to hear what you think about EUDR as somebody who is going to be at the center point of having to do the compliancing that's required for EUDR. What are your thoughts on it? Wow, that silence speaks.
The only positive thing I can say about it is that it must have stemmed from increasing pressure from bottoms up to try to do something about deforestation, right? So that's but then everything that comes after it is terrible and hypocritical. I think, especially coming out of Europe, when Europe's own laws on agriculture and how to. Do you know that it's illegal to have wild land on your agricultural plot in Europe? You will not get your subsidies if you have wild land on your agricultural plot. And we're telling the rest of the world to reforest. This in itself is just madness.
The fucking irony of this is just wild.
Yeah, and for us, it's not a problem. It's not a problem because we know everyone, and it's easy and cheap to get this information. It does feel a bit weird to have to pry into people's privacy like this, but then we always just explain the situation. It's kind of beyond us, right? So it's just this weird thing that's going on in Europe. Can we have your geolocation? And then, but on the other hand, it's an interesting process because it's fairly easy to get the information almost everywhere if you know people, right? Or if you have good relationships with people. But the same algorithm that we developed our own algorithm because we don't want to rely on somebody else's. So we use several satellites to see what's going on. That same algorithm can be used for reforestation, which is pretty cool. So now we have our own internal system of, we have all kinds of regenerative programs. Now we can actually monitor them. So that's nice. That's something that we wouldn't have done because we don't really monitor or measure very much anyway. So that's nice. But now it seems that a lot of that isn't necessary because it's being pushed by a year. So. Did you know
that? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Everybody's talking about, hey, they've delayed it a year. But it's not going away.
Okay.
And the part that is, I think, confusing a lot of people is if the ultimate objective is to stop deforestation, how are they going to do that?
Yeah.
That's the part that I don't quite understand, because by going for this idea of stopping deforestation in order to make consumers in Europe, because this sounds like one of those election promises that governments make, and then they're like, fuck, we have to fulfill it. So let's just do something to fulfill it. Maybe I'm reading the situation wrong. That's just what it reeks of, right? So now they've got to create this situation that makes European coffee drinkers feel great about the coffee that they're drinking. I'm all for that. Isn't that just going to create a whole bunch of less coffee in Europe and make people drink something else?
But what it's going to create, I mean, what we always say is the last thing you need to do if somebody's at risk of deforesting the land, the last thing you should do is not buy their coffee.
Right.
I mean, what else are they going to do? Like in Congo, where there's massive deforestation, where we have the hardest time sort of getting there's a lot of red flags everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to import it anyway, and then go to court. I mean, what's the worst thing you can do for these farmers is to say no, because then those remaining trees, they'll go as well. Right? I mean, it's
fascinating.
The intention in problem areas will create the opposite effect. Create more deforestation if you don't buy people's coffee, and that's already happening. Ethiopia is a big example. I mean, a lot of the large traders, they just won't come to these risk areas, when what they should be doing is taking them by the hand and creating reforestation programs.
Well, and a lot of the time
are supporting grassroots deforestation programs, which there always are.
Well, and this is your conversation about NGOs and their intention around that. Like, are they actually putting the money where it needs to go? He's getting a lot of sun in his face. Yeah. The lighting in the room is being adjusted.
Oh, yeah.
So this is where the reforestation, the NGOs can be playing a role that really does have a positive effect. The problem is that their hands are tied a lot of the time, because the money that's coming into these NGOs has an ulterior motive.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when it comes to EUDR, what do you think, what role do you think EUDR is going to play on your business as a values-driven business? Strengthen it, weaken it, change it at all?
Strengthen it.
Why?
It's put a lot of the things that we've wanted. It's perfecto, thank you. It's put a lot of the programs and things that we've wanted to do in, let's say, accelerated them.
Okay.
What we're going to be able to do for every single coffee is to have this passport of, who it's produced by, EUDR compliance, reforestation programs, how much extra money they received over the local alternative, everything. We have all that data. We've just never put it in such a nice order because nobody's been asking for it. And now,
right.
now they are. Yeah.
So
that gives us a huge, combined with our relationship model, where we know in most cases, we know that we're going to have the coffee year in, year out from our suppliers, is going to give us an enormous advantage in Europe.
The big trading houses are charging now what's called an EUDR differential. That's a real thing, folks. I'm not joking. There's an EUDR. Yeah. Will you charge something like that? I already can guess the answer. Is that required of you to charge the people who are buying your green coffee? Will they have to pay an EUDR differential?
The work, just to explain the work, the answer is no, but to explain the work, we paid around €6,000 to a company called 52 Impact to develop this algorithm. It's quite easy. Mm-hmm. And they scan these areas, the GPS coordinates that our partners give them, they scan, and it gives this result. Mm-hmm. Right. So a lot of the work is hours of farmers and exporters and in between businesses going into the field and measuring this stuff. They definitely should be rewarded for that work. Mm-hmm. Right. So that's a part of the price that we pay, but that's pennies. So in the scale of one container of coffee, that's not very much. And also this €6,000, I mean, it's our responsibility because we're asking this thing from them. So in the end, in the final price, it won't even be a cent, I guess. It won't even be a single euro cent. No. No, it won't. It will be invisible. That's how cheap it is if you have good relationship. So the premium they pay is it's another way to make money. So it's because they created scarcity because they're not invested in the people that they work with. So now they have to work with fewer people. Mm. And gives them risk, which costs money, which then the consumer has to pay for, which is scandalous.
When you approach, and we're going to talk more about this in the final episode, the challenges that are coming up in 2025 and beyond. Now that EUDR has been extended a year, some of those challenges are going to be delayed somewhat, but they will happen because people are going to take another year to get themselves ready for this. They're not going to accelerate the process. Mm-hmm. But there will be, by all expectations, a reduction of coffee coming into Europe and a reduction in availability of coffee in Europe, green coffee and roasted coffee. What do you see is going to be the ripple effects of that in the industry, not to consumers, in the industry? Within Europe.
Yeah. If best case, there will actually be an upward trend of forestation. I'm trying to think of a best case scenario. Mm-hmm. That this will actually have the intended effect, because and otherwise there'll be.
But talk to me about coffee roasters. Talk to me about cafes. What's going to happen as the supply goes down?
Yeah.
What happens internally in the industry?
Yeah. Yeah, things become too expensive for people to handle. We're there, yeah. So there's a lot of businesses that are going for that want sort of the off-grade stuff from farmers that usually they sell locally because it's the only thing that can keep their businesses running with a 30% increase in price. Mm-hmm. If there's even more scarcity because of EUDR, that's going to drive up prices. That's going to make a lot of value driven roasting companies and sort of downstream companies also go bust. Or have to trade their value.
This is where we go to that risk relationship with values, right?
Exactly. Yeah. In this case, yes. Yeah. Because you have to pay more for this type of coffee, but you're going to go for the cheapest thing that is at least compliant, because Yeah. Unless at some point relationship coffee actually becomes cheaper than the standard, which is what I think will happen in the long run. We're going to have a steadier supply of coffee that is easily compliant to all this stuff. So will it be more expensive to work with a value-based trader, to stand by your values in this world?
Isn't it fascinating what the future is going to be for our industry? Mm-hmm. For the first time, I think that we have a shot at creating a reimagining the industry that should have been, rather than the industry that we ended up creating from 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or from when the first coffee was traded in Mecca. That's when things went the wrong way.
But we significantly accelerated the version of the fucked up industry that we've got in the last 30 years.
Yeah.
So we have one episode to go, folks. And in that, we're going to talk about all of this bundled up into the volatility of 2025 and beyond. So join us for the final episode of this really wonderful series with Lennart. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, friends. Please don't forget to show us some love by subscribing, liking, commenting, and most of all, sharing this podcast with your friends. Check the show notes for links, including our sponsors and our Patreon. And stay tuned for more great conversations on the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward.